We began discussing looking into the mid and small cap arena for additional value, given the fact that we have got very limited value options in the big cap stocks. IT stocks, would they be on your radar screen at the moment? Because that is a debate that has been raging.
Yeah, I think so. To put it into the broader perspective, you've got to look at where they are in their earnings cycle. A lot of companies would have pulled back on their IT expenditure during the downturn, and especially even going into the downturn. It's one of the first things that they can cut back on. Now that we've seen the recovery start, people are not only starting to spend on IT again that they would have missed out on for the last 18 months, but they're also hiring new people and they're having to provide infrastructure for them as well. So in terms of the earnings cycle, we think the IT sector still has a way to go. And then secondly, when you're looking at some of the earnings multiples that some of the other sectors are trading on, the IT I think still offers a little value. If you're staying within the broader caps, then Datatec and Data are attractive. If you have a little more appetite for risk, then you can look at some of the smaller stocks. I think EOH has been a solid performer, always tends to beat its expectations, well, the market expectations. And then some other smaller stocks, Pinnacle Technology, and possibly even Mustek, fairly volatile earner, but I think that on compelling valuations below a P of 5, I think there's room to dip a toe into that.
And BCX?
BCX had a good trading statement out last week. Earnings were up 200%. That was obviously coming off a very low base, but that's also one to look out for. Make sure that you do your numbers though, and make sure you're comfortable with where you're going in. You
mentioned Dimension Data and Datatec, and you say you would have exposure to both. Do you not prefer one over the other? Dimension Data heavily skewed to the services environment.
I think at the moment Datatec would be our call. It is slightly more expensive. I think it's on a PE of 15 at the moment, whereas Data on a PE of 14. So you are paying up a little bit for that, but the premium perhaps worth it. And Datatec's been one of our calls for
is it simply because you prefer the Datatec model?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Coming back to the local market, the only news out today was that the Minister of Health is wanting to source antiretrovirals from the international market at lower prices than what they can get from the local drug makers. I see Aspen closed up at 2/3%, and pretty close to the top of the top 40 today. So certainly that news not impacting the likes of Aspen. Do you think going forward drug makers in South Africa could feel the impact of the government making such a move?
It's definitely something to watch, Bronwyn. You hear something like that and you'll start to firstly check your numbers and then also just try to see how the story develops. From the initial price action, the market seems to be taking it in its stride, but more details from the Department of Health and a little more analysis on the companies, and we'll have to keep an eye on that one.
And this whole show has been heavily skewed towards Greece and whether the furore on that side is now over, done and dusted is the term that I used earlier. What do you make of the eurozone situation? And again, I put the question, are we going to continue to see Greece, perhaps even the likes of Portugal and Spain, making headlines?
I don't think we've heard the last of the Greece story. It's by no means done and dusted. I think it's something we're going to be hearing about for the next few months and possibly into the early next year. The market reaction has been fairly positive initially. It's what they've been wanting. However, there's still a number of question marks. This is the first time any action like this has been taken. The question mark is who is responsible for what. They had a meeting in Brussels today, and the IMF and the EU are trying to hammer that out. And then the second thing is the 15 parliaments still have to vote and pass this. Now, it's going to be hard enough for the German legislature to be passing this. How about Ireland, Spain or Portugal? And they'll more be inclined to do it because they realize that they might be next. So I don't think this is a story we've heard the last of. We'll have to watch it and we'll have to see how it develops there.
We also spoke to Brian Coyne earlier in London, incredibly bullish on emerging markets as a whole. Are you heeding caution at these levels on the JSE all-share?
Yes, coming back to what I said earlier, we're all getting a little dizzy from the heights, but I think in emerging markets we're going to have to get used to the idea of things being on a valuation higher than what we've experienced in the past. And with the amount of money that's coming into emerging markets, and South Africans are a small recipient of that, you know, valuations where we see real value are not going to be around for a while. We're going to have to watch that.